taxes.
All right, Edward Morse, publisher of the Petroleum Intelligence Weekly, thanks very much for sharing your expertise with us today.
Glad to be here.
Good to see you. We'll be back with continuing coverage of America at War. Operation Desert Storm still storming in the Persian Gulf.
From NBC News, America at War continues. Here is Tom Brokaw.
Good afternoon again, everyone. We have a dramatic development now in the Persian Gulf that we want to tell you about. There is a report out of the BBC, that's the British Broadcasting Corporation, that the 2 crew members of that British Tornado fighter plane lost Thursday, that the 2 crew members managed to eject before the plane went down in flames, and we are now told that there will be a rescue operation launched to retrieve them. They have been located somewhere in the desert with an electronic beacon of some kind. They can probably hide out. That's a vast area, and they may be able to take cover, although they could be discovered by some Bedouin tribe that may be wandering through there. But they can probably take cover, and I'm sure that they have some survival gear with them as well. How they'll be rescued, we cannot say. It's also important to point out that the British Defense Secretary, Tom King, said the plane had gone down as the result of an engine fire, which started for unknown reasons. Apparently they were not shot down. That probably means they had a greater opportunity to get out. They are still being listed as missing officially. The BBC says that those 2 crew members, a pilot and a navigator, are alive, and a rescue operation will be launched. So that's a situation that we'll be watching very carefully. We want to tell you now that it is 11 o'clock in the Persian Gulf, in Iraq, and in Saudi Arabia, and the attacks continue. Here at the White House, it's just after 3 in the afternoon on this Thursday, and NBC's John Cochran has been watching President Bush's day. John?
Tom, at this hour, the president is meeting with his cabinet to discuss the Gulf crisis, to discuss the state of war, which we're now in. President spokesman Marlin Fitzwater says this is war. You'll recall there was a controversy at the time of the start of the Korean War. Harry Truman always referred to it as a police action. A lot of people said it looked like a war to them. They're not playing any of these word games here at the White House. Even though there is no declaration from Congress, Marlin Fitzwater says this is war. Now, at this cabinet meeting, which is going on right now, at least a couple of things I know of that will be discussed. Energy policy. The Secretary of Energy will discuss the release of these oil reserves from salt domes down in Louisiana and Texas, oil which will be put onto the world market to both stabilize prices and to stabilize financial markets who are worried about a shortfall in oil. Beyond that, the president will also be getting a reading from Attorney General Dick Thornburgh on the possibility of terrorism in this country now that we are at war, and the counterterrorism measures that we're taking, Tom.
Very much. Do you think that we'll get any kind of a readout on that cabinet meeting from members of the cabinet or from Marlin Fitzwater?
I have asked Marlin to do just that. He said he will try to do so. I said, we want to know what the president says, too. We don't want just a handout that says they discuss certain issues. I think they realize here at the White House that this is an unusual situation. Normally, cabinet meetings, they do not discuss in any great detail, but they realize the enormous interest now in anything the president does, Tom.
John Cochran, more information is coming in all the time about just what happened in the skies over the Persian Gulf, particularly over Kuwait and Iraq when those first sorties were launched last night. NBC's Arthur Kent is at Dhahran, the big Air Force base in Saudi Arabia, hard by the Persian Gulf itself. Arthur?
Tom, further to that report that you had just mentioned of the British pilots being located and a rescue mission being mounted to extract them from their location, we've just had confirmation in the Gulf from the Kuwaiti government in exile. Sheikh Sabah al-Ahmed, the defense minister, has stated that a Kuwaiti A-4 Skyhawk jet was downed while in action over Kuwait this afternoon. As a matter of fact, we had noticed a flight of 12 of those Skyhawks. These are some of the planes that escaped from Kuwait during the invasion August 2nd and 3rd and rebased here in Saudi Arabia. Now, the word is that the 2-man crew of that Skyhawk as well survived. They managed to eject. They are on the Kuwaiti side of the border, obviously in Iraqi-held territory, and a rescue mission is underway to recover that crew as well. So again, a developing story of more intense combat now, close contact between aircraft flying over Iraq and the Iraqi ground forces below, and we'll try to follow up on both the RAF and the Kuwaiti Air Force crews for you, Tom.
Thank you, Arthur, if you'll do that. And we're going to go to the Pentagon now to talk to Fred Francis about how such a rescue operation might be launched. I would guess, Fred, that it would have to be some kind of a helicopter penetration, right?
Exactly, Tom. For several months up on the border there, anticipating combat, the United States placed its Special Operations Forces, commandos in fact, Task Force 160, a special commando helicopter squadron based in Kentucky, and a lot of other assets from North and South Carolina, specifically for the opening days of combat to go in and to rescue pilots. And they expected to have a great many more planes shot down. We were told in the first days of combat the United States expected to lose 10 to 15 aircraft. In the first 12 hours of combat, the U.S. only lost one. Now, let me caution everyone that we're going into a second phase of ground combat, air combat here now, where some of the targets will have to be hit for a second time. And that means that the air defenses on the ground, the Iraqis, will be waiting for them. They know that their target has not been destroyed. They will expect another attack, and they will be waiting for American aircraft this time. And also in this second phase, where they've begun attacking targets inside Kuwait, that means that U.S. fighters and U.S. attack helicopters will have to be coming in a lot lower, and in some cases a lot slower for smaller targets. So the chances that the U.S. will lose more aircraft is extremely high now into this second, going into this second day, Tom. So it's not quite as rosy. It won't be quite as rosy, we expect, in the next 10 to 12 hours. Tom?
Well, let's take it one phase at a time, Fred. Phase one has gone as well as they could have hoped. The loss of just one airplane, most of the targets that they wanted to hit, they hit and did great damage, right?
That's exactly right. They hit more than 80% of the targets they went after in phase one. And I have to tell you, Tom, talking to a few of the senior officials in this building, although Colin Powell said, let's not be euphoric about it, that is exactly what they are. They are euphoric. They cannot believe that everything worked. The electronic countermeasures, that the Iraqi air defense systems went deaf, dumb, and blind for hours, and the weapons, virtually all of them worked. 91% of the cruise missiles fired from sea, those Tomahawk cruise missiles, 91% of them made it over target. That's an extraordinary rate of success. And so there's quite a bit of elation here that all these high-tech weapons the U.S. spent $1.4 trillion on over the last 10 years appear to be working. And so phase one was very, very successful. And I'm not sure if calling it phase one. I think their phase is the air war is going to go on for 3 to 10 days. But our phase one, this cycle day and night, the elation here is quite high. But they also know, Tom, that it's not over. Saddam has the significant ability for a counterpunch. He has mobile ground-to-ground missiles hidden. It's quite likely, as some of my colleagues have said, that he has not turned on all of his missiles to shoot down airplanes. Very likely, in fact, that he saved some of his airplanes so he doesn't lose everything in the first day. So while the U.S. and its allies and the allies have had a good first day and night cycle, everybody expects something to happen. The other guy has to get lucky, and that's the thinking in this building.
Thank you very much, Fred Francis at the Pentagon. We're going to cross the river now and go up Pennsylvania Avenue to Capitol Hill, where NBC's Andrea Mitchell is standing by with a member of the Senate who had a lot of painful experiences in combat aircraft and with one of the most persuasive voices when it comes to foreign policy in the U.S. House. Andrea?
Yes, I have with me Senator John McCain and Congressman Lee Hamilton. And as you pointed out, Tom, a lot of people, the president, everyone else, talking about not repeating the lessons of Vietnam. Well, that is certainly a profoundly painful reminder to Senator McCain, who was flying A-4s, more than 70 missions, I believe, shot down in 1967, held as a prisoner of war until 1973. Have we now proved a generation later, Senator, that we are fighting a different kind of military battle, that we have learned the lesson of air superiority?
I think clearly we're fighting a different kind of battle. There was no gradual escalation here, nor were there any particularly restricted targets, although I'm happy to say we concentrated on military targets. So, yeah, I think we have learned that lesson. Of course, the equipment that they're using now is vastly superior to that which opposed them, and that wasn't necessarily the case in Vietnam in some cases.
You know, last night when we first saw the footage, those first pool pictures of the F-15Es taking off, Tom Brokaw was talking about the experience of having ridden in the back seat. Powerful experience. You've been through the experience of flying a fighter jet, although the A-4 is a very different kind of piece of equipment, as you say. What is the feeling, the emotion of flying one of those sorties and coming back, hitting the target, coming back, the elation that we saw in a lot of the interviews that we had this morning?
I think, Andrea, particularly the first one, and as you know, most of these pilots, it was their first experience in combat. There's a lot of adrenaline, but there's enormous concentration because you're not just flying an airplane, you're using it as a weapon. And on the way back, there's relief and exhilaration like you saw with those pilots. One, a feeling of satisfaction, and frankly, a little bit of relief that you emerged unscathed, because clearly, even though they had good briefings, they did not know what they were going to encounter once they got there.
Now, one of the things that we've all been advised today by people at the White House, by the Speaker of the House, is not to be too optimistic or euphoric,
yeah,
if you will. Congressman Hamilton, what about what lies ahead, what we think lies ahead?
Well, I think that's good advice. We have very encouraging but very fragmentary early reports. It's very hard to down a feeling that things are going extremely well at this point in time. I think it's important to remember that early reports often are optimistic, and it's far too early to make any judgments about assessments of casualties or progress in this fighting. The Speaker's advice was good advice.
Now, of course, politics always rears its ugly head, and we're having an argument right now downstairs in the Senate between leaders of Democrats and Republicans over what kind of resolution Congress might authorize. Democrats wanting one that acknowledges that there were past disagreements and saying that we at least support our troops in the field. Republicans arguing very forcefully for something that commends the president for leading us into battle. Senator McCain, what's your view of this disagreement? How it might be resolved?
Andrea, I just think it's all regrettable. And in my view, constitutionally, if we're going to do something else in addition to what we did last Saturday, let's have a declaration of war because we're at war. Obviously, that won't happen because I'm not one who's driving the problem. But it's regrettable for us to get into this kind of partisanship at this moment when at least the majority, overwhelming majority of Americans are strongly supporting our president and our men and women in the Gulf.
Congressman Hamilton, despite disagreements over policy, doesn't this kind of dispute sort of diminish the institution of Congress and remind people that politics always intrude?
Well, this is a political body, and politics often intrudes. What impresses me about this particular debate is that it's very meaningful to so many Americans that this Congress go on record commending the young men and women in the Gulf. They don't see that as a political matter at all. A congressional resolution may not be all that important to some of the wise Washington hands around here, but it's very significant to our Americans in our constituencies.
All right, if I take your point, maybe we can negotiate this right here. What if the resolution were to read that the commander-in-chief be supported? Might that satisfy Republicans, and because it's dealing with the president in his military role, satisfy Democrats?
I have no problem with, even though I've had some policy differences with the president. But listen, we had our debate here. My side lost that debate. The Congress spoke with a very clear majority in both the Senate and the House. We should support the president. We should support the country. We should hope that both the president and the country come out looking good at this point. And let's put some of these policy disputes behind us. And certainly let's show our support for the fighting forces.
I think we'll reach some kind of compromise. I hope so tonight.
I hope so. One other thing, we were talking earlier, and I know you've had some intelligence briefings, Senator, and it was your analysis in agreement with the French analysis that even though he has the mobile launches for the Scuds and has some 100 missiles or 75 launchers, that Saddam Hussein would not would no longer have a credible way of launching a chemical attack.
I think that's basically accurate, that he could launch a single or one or two Scuds with chemical weapons on them, and I'm not diminishing the importance of that. But as far as his ability to launch a full-scale attack, I think that's gone at this time.
And do you think that Israel is no longer directly threatened by chemical attack?
I believe that the information we have is that the Scud missiles that were within range of Israel have all been disabled or destroyed. That's one of the best news of this entire conflict so far.
Okay. Thank you very much, Senator McCain, Congressman Hamilton. Tom?
Thank you very much, Andrea Mitchell, Senator McCain, Congressman Hamilton. We'll have continuing coverage from NBC News of America at War in a moment.
If this is a cold, this is the flu. Cold. Flu. Cold. Flu. If what you've got is more than a simple cold, now there's Metaflu, with a maximum dosage of 4 strong medicines to give you flu-strength relief for even your worst symptoms. New Metaflu from Parke-Davis. For more than a cold. For the flu. Metaflu.
Freedent's the one.
Only one gum leads the way when you've got dental work, and that's Freedent. Freedent won't stick to your dental work, so you can be confident chewing it. And because it also moistens your mouth and freshens your breath, Freedent's in a class by itself.
Freedent's the one that took the stink out of gum, and Freedent moistens your mouth. Yeah, moistens your mouth and freshens your breath while you chew.
Non-stick Freedent moistens your mouth and freshens your breath.
Whoever said life begins at 40 obviously hasn't turned 50 yet. We want to extend these good years, so we've made some changes. The right foods, a little exercise, and because our nutritional needs have changed, we've changed our multivitamin tablet. We take Geritol Extend with all the vitamins we need. It's made for folks over 50. Geritol Extend, because you're as young as you feel.
We're still trying to make Heinz home-style gravy just like homemade.
He says, nice try.
But we make it with real beef just like yours.
No. He says it's close.
Heinz home-style gravy, so close to homemade.
When you're cooking your best, nothing tastes quite like butter. Nothing bastes quite like butter. Nothing bakes quite like butter.
Butter.
Butter! When you're cooking your best, nothing tastes quite like butter.
We can only imagine what must be going through the minds of the citizens of Iraq at this hour. They are still under attack, not them directly, of course, but military targets, but many of them live close by those military targets. What can they be thinking tonight about Saddam Hussein and what he has led them into? They had a long and brutal and very costly war with Iran, and now this, an attack by one of the mightiest air armadas that has ever been assembled. It is called Operation Desert Storm, and it continues at this hour. 11:17 at night in the Persian Gulf. European foreign ministers were meeting today in Europe to talk about all of this. Speaking for the Italians, Gianni De Michelis, and speaking for the British, the Foreign Minister Douglas Hurt. Let's hear what they have to say.
We are in favor of launching a strong appeal to Saddam Hussein to accept the reality, and to take the decision which he wasn't able or willing to take until now.
I think the idea of a pause is fallacious. The idea that once you've started a very carefully programmed military operation, you interrupt it in a way which would certainly give your opponent considerable advantage.
We certainly didn't have to spell out which one was the Italian and which one was the British. Let's go now to Europe and a report from NBC's Don Oliver, who has been taking a look at increased concerns in that continent about airport security and the prospect of terrorism.
In Frankfurt, troops in full battle gear with loaded weapons were guarding all American military installations. Dependents and off-duty military were urged to stay in their quarters and not gather in any public places. To ensure that they did, commissaries, gas stations, and other service agencies were closed.
We have like 100% security. We have no deliveries going in or out. The post is basically locked down.
Most of the schools serving U.S. bases have been closed at least through tomorrow. Individual base commanders will then assess the threat and determine if they should remain closed. The bases themselves have to remain open for the various missions in support of the war effort. But those who try to gain entrance to the bases have been warned to expect long delays because of heightened security. Authorities say they do not know how long the new security measures will be in effect.
If there is a bona fide threat that exists, we'll continue the heightened security measures. If there is no bona fide threat, we may stand down a little bit. But that's all a military community commander's call.
The toughest security ever is also in effect at European airports, with body searches and armed policemen standing guard over airplanes. Some U.S. airlines have canceled all of their flights. Don Oliver, NBC News, Frankfurt.
Don Oliver is posted in Frankfurt at the moment as well because he's on another kind of grim prospect of a standby, and that's where the major medical facilities are should heavy casualties begin to mount up on the Allied side. John Cochran is at the White House now. The president has completed, I gather, his cabinet meeting, and we have his remarks, John?
Actually, the cabinet meeting is still going on, but as is normal here, they have the photo opportunity at the start of such meetings. And for the second time today, we have heard from the president. The president said earlier he would not be giving us any battlefield reports. He'd leave detailed descriptions of military goings-on to the Pentagon and to our forces over in Saudi Arabia. But he did answer a few questions from reporters, and here they are.
Conditional surrender by the Has it reached that point so the surrender is the answer?
I tried very hard last night to spell out our objectives, and I think it's very clear. And the United Nations spelled them out, and they remain the same. And he can call it anything he wants, interpret it any way he wants, but we are going to prevail. I don't want to get caught up in some semantics about all of this. It's got to get out of Kuwait. And got to do it with no concessions or no condition. That was determined long ago when he failed to comply with the UN resolution. And now, in keeping with those, we're using force, and we're not going to stop until he fully complies with the resolution. So let's not worry about what we call it. Let's worry about, we want to make it clear, full compliance with the UN resolution, full compliance with the objectives of the coalition forces.
What do you think of his response so far? Okay, lights, please. Thank you.
All right, that's the president. You saw a little superimposed line there saying earlier today, that was about 10 minutes ago, and maybe less. The president once again talking in general terms about what's going on. What he was asked there, I'm not sure you could hear the question, was, what do you mean by asking for Saddam Hussein's surrender? Now, President Bush often listens to the press briefings given by his spokesman, Marlin Fitzwater, and Fitzwater had one earlier today, and we spent a good deal of time at that briefing trying to find out what does surrender mean. That's why the president was saying he doesn't want to play any word games, doesn't want to get into semantics. Surrender, according to George Bush, does not mean that Saddam Hussein lets the coalition, including American forces or even UN forces, come in and occupy Iraq. Nor does it mean that Saddam Hussein has to give up power. He can remain as president of Iraq. George Bush is simply saying that Saddam must comply with the UN resolutions, that he must withdraw from Kuwait. Incidentally, listening a little earlier to Andrea Mitchell and her report from the Hill, this debate that's going on, should there be a declaration of war up on the Hill, the White House is trying to keep a little bit of arm's length from that. President Bush feels he is armed with all he needs. That was the vote of confidence he got last Saturday from both houses of Congress, even though it was close in the U.S. Senate. The president feels he has all the authority he needs. He did say this morning, meeting with congressional leaders, it was important for him to be seen, consulting with them, talking with them this morning, and that's what he did. Tom?
Thank you very much. John Cochran still at his post at the White House, where he will remain. And we'll be back here in just a moment with continuing coverage of America at War after this. It does appear that an attack of some kind is underway tonight.
Last night, America went to war. Tonight, that story in a special one-hour edition of NBC Nightly News.
Only a story this soft can be a secret. And only a bath tissue this soft can be called Kleenex. New Kleenex Premium Bathroom Tissue is specially layered with facial tissue softness on both sides, so all that touches you is softness. Only a song this soft can be a lullaby, and only a premium bath tissue this soft can be called Kleenex.
They get the latest technology, you gotta have the latest technology. They add more equipment, you add more equipment, and both of you want more power. That's why I'm glad there's a silo nearby. Another 100 watts per side, and I'm in there.
Right now at Silo, Pioneer's stereo rack system is $699.99, and Casio's full-size stereo keyboard $249.99.
As a power monger, I feel better with a silo nearby.
Silo, protection from high prices and mediocre service.
From Channel 4, this is a Gulf War News Extra.
Good afternoon. It appears Iraq is doing most of its damage off the battlefield. Since the war began, a half-dozen terrorist attacks have been reported around the world, all of them against American facilities, and all of them believed to have come from Iraq. In Germany, an American-owned Woolworth store has been burned to the ground. In New Delhi, India, a bomb exploded inside a travel agency where an American Airlines sign was posted. Also, shots were reported at the American consulate in Jerusalem. Incredibly, no one is reported injured. In another development, the Egyptian government now denies that 50 Iraqi tanks defected to Saudi Arabia. Egyptian officials say that an early report making that claim is inaccurate. Now, this, of course, is the first time in history that we watched a war begin on television. Marine veteran Fred Tucker watched a very different beginning for the war in Vietnam. He joins us now to talk about some of his thoughts and observations on all of this. Mr. Tucker, is this going to be dangerous at all to be getting all of this information so instantaneously as it's happening? Is this at all dangerous for the Allied strategy?
It can be. It's a completely new ball game with the instantaneous information that is available to the enemy as well as to our folks here at home. It's something that's going to have to be watched very closely.
As a veteran, what are your feelings about the general public learning so much so quickly?
Well, I think the public has a right to know, but one thing that sticks in my mind is that checking history, if you can find one war or a major campaign in which the victor did not impose some type of field press censorship.
Okay, so far now this has been strictly an air war, and we're told that the ground forces may begin to move shortly. How do you think we'll fare on that plane?
I think when the time comes to commit the ground forces, I think they will do exceptionally well. The progress so far has been excellent, in my opinion, based on the newscast that I've heard. I think it's a great example of what the military can do when the military is permitted to do what they are trained and capable of doing without outside interference, shall we say.
President Bush says that before all of this is over, we will see our share of trauma. Do you think that Iraq will be able to mount a serious counterattack now, despite all these losses?
I really don't have the answer to that. I certainly hope not, but our folks that are over there seem to have a pretty good handle on what's going on and seem to be performing superbly. So if that continues, hopefully they will not be able to do that.
Are you surprised at all with the small number of casualties on our side?
I'm elated at the small number, and again, back to what I mentioned previously, so far this Desert Storm appears to be an excellent example of what the U.S. military can do when the U.S. military is the one calling the shots.
Now, we've had, of course, over the last 10 years or so, there was a lot of criticism over the military buildup through the Reagan years. Are we seeing the fruits of those long years of buildup?
Fruits is a term that could be used. I think during the Reagan years we had to play catch-up from a previous administration where had one of our presidents been re-elected, Department of Defense would have become Department of Wishful Thinking, in my personal opinion.
Okay. Just one last question. How long do you think the war will last now, given our initial success?
There's no way for me to predict that. I definitely hope it will be short, effective, get in, do what we have to do, and get home with the minimum number of casualties.
Major Fred Tucker, thank you for being with us. And that's Extra. Stay tuned now for more NBC coverage of America at War.
Well, the hours are long and my job is tough. I can't get ahead, I don't make enough. I've been thinking, I wanna take my life, wanna put it in gear. I'm gonna get things going with a new career.
Call Edmondson Junior College at 366-1144. That's 366-1144.
I've been thinking about going back to school at night.
Castronaut invites you to their spring and summer bridal fair and fashion show this Saturday at the Stouffer Nashville Hotel. Wedding renditions for the most important day of your life.
Channel 4 presents a special 90-minute documentary on people with AIDS, Reflections in the Dark, Saturday at 6:30 on Channel 4.
Feel great, look good, save money during Watson's Health and Fitness Sale. Hot tubs, Wolf tanning systems, saunas. That's Watson.
Channel 4 and NBC bringing you full Gulf coverage.
War continues. Here is Tom Brokaw.
Almost a new day in the Persian Gulf. We're coming up now at 11:30 p.m. Thursday night in Saudi Arabia and, more importantly, in Iraq and in Kuwait as well. Operation Desert Storm goes on unabated. NBC's Arthur Kent is in Saudi Arabia at Dhahran at this hour. Arthur, we have some additional material?
Yes, Tom, through the night we're seeing a sort of routine establish itself, irregular though it is, of aircraft coming and going, British strike aircraft, Saudi interceptors, American interceptors, going about the business of going out to their targets in Iraq and Kuwait. Those interceptors doing their protective runs and ready to engage any aircraft that may come up to get them. It's on other matters, on other affairs here, we're of course speaking all the time to U.S. military officials and to Saudi officials with regard to the possibility of retaliatory action by Saddam Hussein and his armed forces. As we've said before, no way to quantify what the chances are of any sort of rockets or bombs getting through to us here, but the possibility of terrorist strike is one that is uppermost now in the minds of security officials here and around this airbase and associated buildings and the hotel and the civilian airport. We can report that there is heightened security around our position here. For instance, we have armed Marine, Navy, Army guards who are patrolling the area, keeping an eye on the perimeter, making sure there are no intruders. Again, just one example of the heightened state of preparedness should there be some sort of hidden threat that comes to us by way of retaliation.
Arthur Kent, I think that we now have some video of Tornado jets. That was one of the first British air contingents to arrive in Dhahran. They were posted right alongside the American F-15s there. In fact, there was one taking off. They've got a range of 863 miles altogether. They were refueling midair because they were making the long run up to the Baghdad area and back. And last night, there were some storm clouds in the area. One of the British pilots quoted as saying, it was like being on a rail. They went right in electronically, dropped their ordnance, their bombs, and then shot for the skies once again, and he broke through the clouds and saw the British air tankers there to refuel him, and he said it was a great sight for him to see. This is an internal nighttime camera of some kind. It may be in the bunkers near the Tornado installations. It's very hard to know. Yes, in fact, that's what it is. We saw this earlier. This, again, the British troops, I think, on the ground with their gas masks at the ready if necessary. There was an air raid siren at Dhahran that we witnessed last night. At any rate, they can carry about 2,000 pounds of, about 20,000 pounds of ordnance altogether that they can unload in one of those raids, the British Tornado jet. It's a little swept-wing jet and a highly efficient fighter at that. Security is a matter of concern not just in Europe and, of course, in Saudi Arabia, but in this country as well. Our aviation expert is NBC's Robert Hager, and he has been examining now the stepped-up security procedures at airports across the country. Robert, have we gone to a high alert?
It's a high alert, all right. It's called a level 4 in the FAA's lexicon, and that is the highest level of security they've ever ordered at U.S. airports. And as a result of this extraordinary level of security, all the airlines today, one by one, have upped the time that they ask passengers to show up at the ticket counter before their flight leaves. Now, on international flights, the rule has always been 2 hours before the flight. Today, the airlines, one by one, have all said that passengers on all international flights should now show up at the ticket counter 3 hours beforehand. And on domestic flights, the rule has always been 1 hour, and now the airlines have upped that to 2. They want people to show up at the airport 2 hours ahead of time. Now, that's at most of the major airports. If it was a little town out in the countryside, that rule wouldn't apply. But at major airports, New York, Chicago, Los Angeles, dozens of others around the country, it should now be 2 hours ahead for domestic flights. Now, that's because of the elaborate electronic checks that they do, the metal detector and the hand searches. All of those are doing many more of those, and so it's requiring a lot more time. Now, there's some other changes as well. There's no more checking in at the gate. Sometimes if you've had a board pass, you've been able to go directly to the gate. Today, the FAA said everyone has to go to the ticket counter first, even if they have a board pass. There will be no curbside check-in for bags. We knew that was coming. That's already put into effect a couple of days ago by some of the airlines, but today it's mandatory for all the airlines. No more curbside check-in of bags. And this is interesting. On all the flights to Germany, there are no electronic devices allowed. That's not in checked luggage. You can't take electronic devices in checked luggage, nor in hand-carry luggage. And when they open your bag, as they'll do when they screen it and see an electronic device in, they'll take it out. They'll seize it. They were doing that at the Frankfurt airport this morning. And they take it away from you, give you a chit, and say you're going to have to get it mailed later, but you can't take it with you on the flight. Tom?
Bob Hager, when I was coming back from the Middle East the other day, I was stuck for a $200 insurance surcharge on Air France. I had to pay up front coming out of Cairo to Paris. Do you think that we'll begin to pay higher prices as a result of what is bound to be a higher insurance charge at some point?
Well, I would think if the hostilities end fairly soon, and of course there's no way to predict that, why then that insurance rate wouldn't stay up there. But so long as there are hostilities there, the insurance rate will be high, and eventually the airlines will have to absorb that into their regular ticket fares. So far, the case that you cite to me of Air France, I've not heard of that being an industry-wide measure. Instead, what most of the American carriers have done is simply cancel their flights into that area.
All right, thanks very much. Robert Hager tonight from Washington. We'll be checking back in with him as he has additional information for us on the prospect of terrorism at airports in this country. Security is very tight. You have no undue reason to worry at this time, especially if you're flying in the middle of the country on the more provincial routes. International flight is an altogether different matter, and it's something that you, A, should think about personally, and B, make a lot of checks on. And you're going to have to show up at the airport a lot earlier because the security procedures are going to get to be a lot tighter. There is this little sidebar piece of information that we should share with you. British tycoon Richard Branson and his Swedish co-pilot Pierre Lindström took off from Tokyo in a hot air balloon, and they dedicated their flight to the peace in the Middle East. And they have now successfully completed a trans-Pacific hot air balloon flight. They've landed in the Canadian Arctic. They may have to spend the night out in the woods, we're told, but they did successfully complete that flight. That's an altogether different kind of flight than what is underway now in the Persian Gulf. And from Wall Street, the latest. Dow Jones Industrials up 105 points on what can only be described as continuing encouraging news from the Persian Gulf, although this operation is a long way from over. And both at the Defense Department, the White House, as well as on Capitol Hill, I think that we should point out, everyone is saying, let's not get ahead of ourselves here. We still have a tough row to hoe. Oil at one point today was below $20 a barrel. Someone who knows the mind of Saddam Hussein pretty well is Adel Darwish. He's an Egyptian-born investigative reporter, and he works in the Middle East for The Independent. That's a newspaper in London, and he has published a book called Unholy Babylon, The Secret History of Saddam's War. Mr. Darwish, Saddam Hussein did not arise full-blown from the desert sands, did he? He had a lot of help along the way.
No, he did not, and he grew up in a very difficult environment, surrounded by violence, and he had to fight his way to the top.
He was what we would call in this country a kind of small-town bully who had political ambitions. Describe for us, nonetheless, how he was able to combine his kind of ruthless mentality with what we can only I think, fairly and accurately call a kind of canny political instinct as well.
I think that actually lies in the nature of his environment. If I may use the American expression, he made his bones at early age by joining his uncle in killing a man he was barely 15. Then he was picked at the age of 20 to join an assassin group with the Ba'ath Party to assassinate the Prime Minister of the day, Abdul Karim Qasim. And it was a fiasco. But when he returned back to Iraq, he fled, and when he returned back to Iraq, he was in the underground movement of the Ba'ath Party and formed the hit squad of the party. So once the party was in power in 1968, he cunningly made himself in charge of the security organization within the party, and within a decade he became president and eliminated all those who were respectable or had some kind of political career. So he combined the violence with this brutal force he had, of course, and the money generated from oil revenue gave him all the muscle and the power he needed.
Yeah, and there were a lot of Western companies that were very eager to supply him with arms as well. American companies, German companies, French companies, even British companies.
Yes, unfortunately, by the beginning of 1980, 1979, 1980, the West in general, especially the United States, were terrified and shaking by the prospect of the fall of the Shah of Iran and the rise to power of the Islamic fundamentalism and the revolution of late Ayatollah Khomeini. And they panicked into finding someone to keep the Islamic tide check, keep it on the eastern side of Shatt al-Arab waterway. And it was Saddam Hussein presented them with this idea. And but within a year after the Gulf War started, the Iraqi troops were doing badly, and all the Western companies rushed into aid of Saddam Hussein. And even in the United States, Germany, and France, where national executive and national laws have prohibited the sale of arms, the security services in all these countries managed to find a way around it and supply Saddam Hussein with all kinds of sophisticated weapons.
Thank you very much. Adil Darwish, who has written, as I say, a book called Unholy Babylon, the Secret War Machine of Saddam Hussein. We do not know where Saddam Hussein is at this hour or what he is likely to do next. He has not yet surrendered or given any indication that he's about to back off, of course, as the operation continues against him. There are continuing sorties involving both the United States F-15s and B-52s as well, doing some carpet bombings. F-4s are involved, a whole range of aircraft. At 9 o'clock this morning, they've flown 1,000 sorties. By now, it's probably over 2,000 at this time. So we'll have continuing coverage of Operation Desert Storm right after this.
This dry skin itch, won't anything stop it fast?
Lanacaine will. Lanacaine shuts off the itch like a switch, fast. Only Lanacaine cream works on contact with the nerves that cause dry skin itch. Look, Vaseline Intensive Care can't. Jergens can't. These can't. And Lanacaine Deep moisturizes too. Helps heal rough, dry skin. For dry skin itch, every itch.
Lanacaine does shut off the itch. Like a switch, fast.
Come on and lose that weight, get your body slim. Lose yourself in the taste. New
Dynatrim, the weight loss plan from the makers of Centrum. Just blend for a delicious shake. Blend longer for a creamy mousse. Or freeze it for a frozen treat. Come on, lose yourself in the taste.
More delicious ways to lose it. Shake it, freeze it, creamy mousse it. You've never been so thin. Introducing Dynatrim. Lose yourself in the taste.
Everybody needs some money sometime. Everybody needs some cash somehow.
Hello, dear. To send money fast by phone, call 1-800-CALL-CASH or come to any of Western Union's 16,000 convenient locations.
My sometime is now.
Western Union, the fastest way to send money.
You've always trusted Woolite to care for your fine sweaters. You can also get that same Woolite care for your rugs. Woolite's triple action cleaning system penetrates deep down to remove even stubborn dirt. Trust Woolite care.
This toothpaste will blow you away. Wow. With a breath freshener that's a brush of fresh air. Wow. It's Aquafresh Extra Fresh with a breath freshener that beats the leading brand. Aquafresh Extra Fresh. It's a brush of fresh air.
In terms of information, we're kind of in a trough at the moment. We have not gotten an update recently from the Pentagon. The last report was that there had been only one American casualty, that is, a flyer that had been killed in an F-18, pardon me, off the Saratoga. And we had one report that 2 British flyers have been lost as well, but now there is a report that they, in fact, ejected and they are somewhere in the desert and a rescue operation will be underway shortly. We do not know if there have been additional casualties, that is, deaths and wounded of airmen since that time. I will tell you that in Nicosia, Cyprus, radio monitors are picking up reports from Baghdad radio claiming that Iraq has shot down 44 planes. There is no basis for believing that whatsoever. At this point in the war, we can only imagine that there's a fair amount of propaganda coming out of Iraq as it tries to rally both its troops and its people. Faith Daniels is with me this afternoon as we continue our coverage. And, of course, Faith, no one, as I say, is watching all of this with greater care or greater emotion than the families of those people who are on duty in the Persian Gulf.
That is certainly true, Tom. The families are glued to the television, glued to news reports, and certainly keying in on the one word that you just mentioned, which is casualty. They want to know more about that. One of the people closely watching all the news reports is Kathy Stachura. She is with us from our station in Chicago, WMAQ, where she has been monitoring news events. Kathy, your husband is with the Air National Guard, the refueling wing. Any word from him at all?
No, none at all.
When was the last time you spoke to him?
I spoke to him early Sunday morning, about 2 o'clock in the morning. Very short, brief call. Called a morale call. He just said that he was doing fine and not to worry about him, and that just always remember that he would be okay, and that as soon as he could contact me that he would.
I know you want to believe it. Did you believe it?
You have to have something to hang on to, and yes, I want to believe it.
You have 6 children at home under your care.
Yes.
That's a lot for anyone to handle, especially under these circumstances. How are you all bearing up?
I think we're all doing very well. I think we have a lot of friends that are supporting us, plus between the 6 kids and myself. We all have our moments, but we all have to be strong for one another. We've all taken on extra responsibilities, extra duties.
How old are they?
My oldest son is 18, and my youngest is 5, and you know, every other year they're in between. I have 2 sons and 4 girls.
Do they seem to be consumed with this, or are they going about their normal routines?
They're very concerned, but it's like everybody's trying to be strong for everybody else, okay, to try and show that we can be strong here, to take some of the burden off of our loved ones that are over there, because if they have to worry about us falling apart over here, they certainly can't concentrate on the tasks that they have to accomplish over there.
What was the reaction in your house last evening when you first heard that bombs were being dropped in Baghdad?
I was on my way home from work, and I was in the car, and I turned on the radio, and I heard it over the radio. And as I'm driving down River Road on my way home, I started talking to myself as to talk myself out of hysteria. What do you do in a moment like that when you know all of a sudden, you know, the United States has gone to war? So I just said, okay, I'm in traffic, you know, and I certainly wouldn't want to do anything to harm anybody else. Therefore, just concentrate on driving, get yourself home to your family. I knew they'd be glued in front of the TV. And when I got home, my family and friends, you know, were there around to support us. There were some press people there that I've dealt with in the past that have been just great, that have been writing terrific stories to send the word to all the other husbands and wives and friends and loved ones of those over there, to assure them that we're behind them, that we support them, and that we're very proud of them. And we hope they come home soon.
You seem to be so calm and so confident. I'm wondering if that's just on the exterior.
I have that heaviness in my chest. You know, sometimes I feel like my hair is growing more rapidly, you know, the follicles of my hair, because I'm tensed up and I have a headache. And I just keep telling myself, okay, let's just keep going. Let's just go on. You know, and that's kind of my way of getting through it. As far as the kids, they're maybe a little bit more rebellious, a little bit more whiny. We're all trying to be very patient with them, not trying to holler at them for, you know, stupid little things, but yet still hold some type of normality in our household, you know, as far as getting the house picked up, you know, so that it looks halfway decent, especially because we're droves with phone calls and people that are visiting, people that are bringing things over, people that are, you know, trying to show support in any way they can.
Well, and I'm sure the distractions are good for you all. Kathy, our thoughts are certainly with you and your 6 children, and we hope for the best for everyone.
I thank you very much.
Tom?
I'm so struck by the fact that both children and the families now have a kind of front row seat on this war. We've never been to war quite like this ever before, in which information is instantly available to people, and that the war had such a fixed starting time, and we hope will have a fixed ending as well. And everyone feels, I think, included, involved in all of what is going on. We want to talk about the wider political ramifications of what is going on in the Persian Gulf now with Hossein Askari. He's an Iranian who teaches at George Washington University. He is an expert on the region, and he was writing about what we could expect next as soon as Saddam Hussein was invading Kuwait last August. What about the prospects of the United States being able to be effective now from a political point of view, Mr. Askari, in the Middle East, if this military operation goes just the way the president would like it to?
Well, I think the military part is, in a sense, the easy part. It all depends how many people die in Iraq, how we handle the rest of this war, and in fact, how afterwards we are magnanimous to the Iraqi people. I've heard earlier today the ironies of how things turn out. I heard earlier today that in fact there are right now streams of Iraqi refugees going into Iran. And if you look at it from Ayatollah Khomeini's perspective, under the grave, in his case, the United States is getting rid of his most mortal enemy. So you can never really turn out how the political situation turns out. And I think we have to look beyond what is going on and not to become too euphoric at the loss of human life.
What about the tone in this country, beginning with the President of the United States once the military operation is over? What could he say, and in what fashion should he say it, that will neutralize any anti-American sentiments that we know exist in the Middle East?
Well, I think it really is the conduct of this war. It's really much more our actions than our words. And we're going to be hard-pressed when this war is in fact over, how we get the Iraqi people and the rest of the Arab world back in a cohesive world that we can have regional security in that part of the world.
Can you imagine that American forces, all of them, can come home instantly or very soon after the military operation is over?
I really believe no matter how this war turns out, which I believe we, in the United States, will win this war, but the really critical point is that no matter how it turns out, there is still a great deal of instability in that region besides Saddam Hussein. And in the end, the United States, I believe, will be there, maybe not in the large numbers right now, but at least up to 50,000 people for my generation of Americans.
Finally, I think that it's worth pointing out, Mr. Hossein Askari, that Saddam Hussein did have a lot of help, didn't he, from the West, economically and militarily, and even politically in becoming what he is today.
Well, I think that's an understatement, if I may say that, Mr. Brokaw, is that in fact Mr. Hussein was built by the Western world. That's where he got his chemical weapons from Germany. He had all the political and the military support. He also got financial aid from the Arab world. And I think in a sense he felt he could do no wrong, because at the time when he was using all the chemical weapons on Iran and innocent Iranians were dying, nobody cared. So he felt he could get away with this too.
Hossein Askari, thanks very much for being with us today. Mr. Askari, of course, is an Iranian, and there is no larger winner in all of this than the regime now in power in Iran, because they've gotten rid of a mortal enemy and they look positively reasonable by comparison to Saddam Hussein. We'll have continuing coverage of Operation Desert Storm after this.
Tonight in primetime, all new episodes of The Cosby Show, A Different World, Cheers, and Wings. Then join Tom Brokaw for a 1-hour NBC News special, America at War.
To celebrate 30 years of 30-minute delivery, Domino's Pizza delivers the Big 3-0. Order a large pizza at regular price and get a medium with your favorite topping for just 30 cents more. A great deal like this won't last forever, so call now and ask for the Big 3-0.
The Big 3-0. It's time for Domino's Pizza Big 3-0.
There goes another one of them Food Line trucks.
Yeah, wasting your time, you ask me, opening new stores around here?
Don't know. Mildred says Food Line's got real good meat and produce.
Already got supermarkets with meat and produce.
And she says they got a big selection of name brand products.
Don't Mildred know we got stores with name brand products?
Well, I reckon so, but she said Food Line's got extra low prices.
Oh? Well, Mildred said it was going to rain today, too, and look how nice.
Food Lion. Everywhere we go, we bring extra low prices.
To go before we hit the 24-hour mark in Operation Desert Storm, and Americans across the country are still tuning in, trying to find out the very latest. Certainly, Fort Stewart, Georgia is tuned to the events there. That's in Hinesville, Georgia. The mayor of Hinesville is with me now, Buddy Deloche. Mr. Mayor, I understand you're recently back from Saudi Arabia in a visit to the troops. What did you find?
Yes, as a matter of fact, I arrived back here on December the 23rd, immediately before Christmas. I've been associated with the Army all of my life. Did my service time in the Army, but I have never been associated with a Army unit that I found the morale nearly as high as it was with the 24th Division.
It was high a month ago. Do you think that a month later it is as high?
Yes, I'm sure it is, and I'm sure that one of the things that made the morale so high in the unit at that time was the fact that we then had the January 15 deadline, and those soldiers trusted the President of the United States to move fairly quickly after that deadline if some peaceful resolution had not come.
And how do you find the morale here at home now?
The military spouses are absolutely amazing people. They are well organized in groups to support and take care of each other. They are going about their duties as they see them. They know exactly what they are, and with one eye on the TV set and watching what's going on over there, they are doing what they're supposed to be doing.
How much of your population is represented in military families?
There are about 22,000 civilians here and about that many military people. So we're about 50-50.
I would imagine that the community really pulls together at times like this.
Yes, we enjoyed an extremely close relationship even before the deployment. But since the deployment, a bond has been formed between the military and civilian communities that will always be there in Hinesville. This has changed our lives.
A deployment of this kind, though, does bring hardships, economic hardships for the area. Are you experiencing that there?
Well, not nearly as severely as we had anticipated, and one of the reasons is the military spouses here on post at Fort Stewart made a conscious effort to do their shopping in Hinesville whenever possible rather than going to some of the other larger cities around. They've made a real conscious effort to support our merchants in Hinesville.
And what about real estate in other areas?
Well, with those that provided rental housing for military families, they've been hit severely. In many cases, as much as 90% of their housing was for military families, and of course they're experiencing that kind of vacancy rate now.
Do you expect that will turn around soon after this deployment ends?
Yes, I have no doubt that will be true. We expect Fort Stewart to have even more troops in the near future once the division returns.
How are the children in the schools coping? Are there special programs going on there to help them?
Yes, all schools have sent counselors to special training programs to teach them to deal with problems that the children might have, and those center primarily around keeping the flow of information open, being available to talk to the child if the child wants to talk about it, and yet not harping on what's going on over there. Children also want to go on with their life and go on being children.
I'm sure this isn't the first time that your part of the country has experienced this. There have been conflicts in the...
From Channel 4, this is a Gulf War News Extra.
Good afternoon, I'm Jeff McAtee. There are two local briefings to report on this afternoon, one at Fort Campbell, the other at the Tennessee National Guard Armory here in Nashville. Let's join Al Tompkins, who is standing by at the Armory, waiting for the afternoon briefing from Adjutant General Carl Wallace. Al?
Jeff, we are expecting some news since our 9 o'clock briefing this morning. Among the news that General Wallace is expected to announce is that the 568 Personnel Service Company of Smyrna has been put on alert, and we're expecting more details as to whether that will mean active duty or not. We also expect to hear more details about the work of the 134th Air Refueling Group from Knoxville. We understand that they were busy all during the night last night and all during the day today. They are capable of in-air refueling of military aircraft, and it is our understanding that they've been playing an important role all during the day today. Also, since 9 o'clock, the 164th Mobile Aerial Port Squadron apparently was active in loading up the bombers this morning. General Wallace is here, and he is about to start the 3 o'clock briefing, and we hope for more details on all of these. General Wallace.
Well, thank you very much. I didn't mean to mislead you this morning when we talked about, when you asked, somebody asked the question about the units alert. No sooner than I had gotten back into the office than the 568 Personnel Services Company was activated, and they're in the process now of gathering, and we should have some later, we'll have some later news on that. The 134th Air Refueling Group evidently had a good time last night, and I don't mean that in that sense because you never have a good time in war. But they had the opportunity to support the initial and subsequent raids or attacks or strikes on the city of Baghdad, or the airplanes which were supported.